Hello, this is Aubrey Rutherford with Cohort 4, and this video that I am going to be doing today is just a reflection on this module and what I observed in some of my teachers at my school site, along with some YouTube videos, and just kind of their take on how lesson planning works. And I got to see how they do their lessons and then how that is implemented into the classroom. So this video will just be going over that along with other key points to this module of unit planning and lesson planning, and just those assessments that go along with those unit planning, both summative and formative. So just through this video, I will be reflecting back on that or this unit module. During my teacher observations, I found it really helpful to get just some information on how the teachers at my school do their lessons and just kind of like the templates that we use, and talking to those different teachers in different grade levels was very helpful to me, and it just kind of made me realize how much work does go into lesson planning. Being this is my first year teaching, I don't have experience with the lesson planning and how much work that takes, but I found out through my team at my school, we help out each other a lot. There's a lot of teamwork that goes into it, and we have a set lesson plan template that we as a grade level use. And I did find it interesting that the other grade levels at my school site, they don't have that. They do their curriculum mapping throughout the year, but they don't have like a set template that they use. And I find that to be really helpful. Talking to a couple mentor teachers, they say that they print that out each week, and they use those lesson plans to build some of the activities they do in their classroom. But that lesson plan that we do together and that we make together for the week, that's what they rely heavily on, and that's kind of like what I use to during the week. But it isn't really, we don't really use backwards mapping. So during this module, I found that to be really helpful to kind of look back and use backwards mapping, since we don't really do that at my school site. But it just really made sense to have to think about the assessments first. And when I first did the backwards mapping assignment, it was kind of a challenge for me, just because no one that I could really talk to at my school did that. So just kind of with the help of this module, it really opened my eyes to how important that backwards mapping is, and assessments, and looking at each lesson plan and thinking about those assessments that are ultimately going to benefit the students. So I found that to be really helpful, along with visiting the classrooms and looking at YouTube videos of lessons. Kind of opened my eyes to how I can implement those techniques into my room. I really liked, there was a couple YouTube videos I watched of some reading, like whole group instruction reading, where the teacher, she had just gone over those pieces. What seemed like it was not the first time she had done that lesson, and so they were going back and they were looking at what they previously learned, and kind of using that as what they were doing currently. And so she had, a visual, they had graphic organizers, which I really like, especially in kindergarten. They need those visual cues. I'm starting to learn that, that really helps them. So this teacher that I had observed on YouTube, she had, her graphic organizer, and just really going step by step, got the kids really involved, which kept their attention. Being that they're younger, you need to always keep their attention. So I just got a lot of really good feedback on my teachers that I observed and those videos, along with some of the other team members of my cohort. This module has just really, opened my eyes to how important each step is to lesson building, and of course the assessments, that I really want to make sure that what I am teaching in my room can be linked back to an assessment, and that I use those assessments throughout the unit, just kind of gauging to make sure that my students are getting it, as well as after the unit, using a end of the unit assessment just to make sure that they really did catch it. So I found those observations to be very helpful throughout this process. Over the course of this module, I have found that there are many pieces to make an effective lesson plan. Those, including differentiating instruction and looking at your students and seeing, what are their levels and how can you change the lesson or meet the needs of those students who need a little bit of a differentiating between, what the higher level students are doing versus those students, who have IEPs or, have speech or have some type of disability that can, make them need some little bit of extra help. And so building a lesson plan using the Teach Now lesson template was really helpful. It just had every single step, and for me, I feel like without really good effective lesson planning, I would leave stuff out of my lessons that I wouldn't normally think about. So having that lesson template and talking with other teachers and my cohort members and filling out that template was a really huge help to me, and just kind of looking at, what are the big ideas of your lesson and having those, what are the materials you need, doing that, putting that differentiating instruction, what are the formative, summative assessments for, each objective that you're doing in your lesson. And so I found that to be very helpful, and just really showed the effectiveness of what a lesson can be and what it should be, along with not forgetting that you need to add those assessments in. And so by filling all of those lesson templates out and kind of using them in my classroom now, it just really helped me to organize my thoughts and to just really make sure that that my lessons have every single piece needed to be effective. And I also did see that with some teachers that you could tell they did a really good effective lesson and following those directions of what those requirements are of a lesson. And I saw that in the classroom, and they were different pieces that they used for their students who did have either a disability or learning that they couldn't keep up with the more higher level students. And so they changed their lesson around, and they made it easier for those few students to be able to follow along. And it just was really helpful to see and break down every piece and aspect that you need of an effective lesson planning. And I saw that through the teachers that I observed, along with a lot of the videos that were available to me. Through this module, I learned, a lot about the differences between a formative and a summative assessment and how, those pieces can be implemented into a lesson plan. A formative assessment being more, of an assessment kind of to monitor the student learning. And I saw that through building the lessons through the Teach Now template, adding those formative and summative assessments into each objective just kind of kept me on track for making sure that for my formative assessments, I am going around and I'm making sure that as the lessons and the units are going on, that my students are getting it, and that it's just more of a informal way of checking to see, okay, when two of my students are collaborating, are they, giving each other feedback for what pertains to what the unit is. For example, during this unit, I worked with a couple of standards that went along with reading a text and being able to give key details, character of the story, setting, and then being able to take that back and kind of relay the story into like a personal experience. And that is something that my students need for being, able to pass an important CELT test in my school district. And so one of the ways that they can pass that test is by being able to listen to a story and give those key details back, or tell the different parts and pieces of the story along with bringing it back to a personal experience. So as I'm reading stories with my students and then they have time to partner share, I am listening to see, using that formative assessment, listening to see, okay, are they, when they're talking, are they giving the right answers? Are they understanding the text? Do I need to go back and review a part of my lesson, or, tweak a piece of my lesson to where they can better understand that? So, just the effectiveness of a formative assessment just really kind of makes sure that, as the unit's going on, that my students are on track, and that, I think the effectiveness of that assessment kind of just helps me make sure that they are on, the right path for what we are doing that unit. And, if I see that they are not catching or grasping certain things, then I can go back and review. Whereas a summative assessment, that's kind of like the way to evaluate my students' learnings, and that's something that usually is done at the end of the unit. So when it kind of comes up to that point of a summative assessment, at that point, we're ready to move on to the next unit. That is to end that unit. So I think the effectiveness of that unit is just hopefully by the end of the time that I can do that last summative assessment, and then I know that they really effectively got it. Overall, I found this unit to be very helpful in, organizing my units and putting together my lesson plans, along with seeing, how lesson plans are done through the other teachers at my school and on YouTube, and just getting the opportunity to observe and see how their lesson planning differs, and just kind of taking different pieces from each and every person that I interviewed or watched. And it was really a good experience to see how important lesson planning and assessments are in this process of creating units. And overall, I was really happy with what I learned through this module.